Здравейте отново на всички, добре дошли. Много се радвам, че се присъединихте към нас днес за този специален вебинар, който смятам, че ще ви бъде много полезен. Се надявам да ви бъде много интересен. Аз съм Сияна Пеева и съм младши експерт по индустриална диагностика в Редаком, като аз ще бъда модератор на събитието днес. А нашият специален гост-презентатор ще бъде Brice Lantheaume от компанията Microbiologics, за която ще ви разкажа след малко. Днешната тема е Quality Control in Pharmaceutical Microbiology, Compliance, Risks and Standards, или качествен контрол в фармацевтичната микробиология в съответствие с регулаторните изисквания, рискове и стандарти. Днешният ни вебинар всъщност е малка част от поредица от събития, които сме приготвили специално за вас, като тя е вдъхновена от стремежа ни постоянно да ви държим в течение, да ви запознаваме с най-оптималните решения и най-настоящите иновации в сферата на качествения контрол и диагностиката. Всъщност от самото начало нашата компания е с много силен фокус именно върху микробиологията, като нашата цел е да ви осигуряваме както най-качествените и пълни решения за микробиологичните анализи, така и такива решения, които всъщност да са много лесни за въвеждане в работа и да оптимизират самия процес и да го ускоряват. Затова специалните теми, които сме ви подбрали за следващи събития, са именно следните. Първата тема на предстоящото вебинар ще е именно за изкуствен интелект в микробиологичната диагностика. Както предполагам всички от нас са запознати с модерните течения, изкуственият интелект е изключително наложен в момента в всякакви сфери и индустрии. Съответно, вече намира и приложение в микробиологичната диагностика. И то вече на много достъпно за всички ниво. Като ще ви разкажем съответно за автоматичните клоноброячи с AI технология, като те съответно имат над 20% по-точен анализ прямо конвенционалните вече утвърдени автоматични броячи. И ще ви запознаем с революционния Scan Station, който не е просто инкубатор или анализатор на данни, то е всичко в едно. То е цялостно решение, което ви позволява инкубация на изключително голям брой проби, както и сканиране и анализ в реално време на тези проби. Съответно, едно от най-големите им предимства е именно, че може да получите резултати не в рамките на дни, а в рамките на часове, тъй като уредът проследява растежа на колониите дори преди да може да ги забележите. Следващата много важна тема ще бъде иновации и оптимизации в мониторинга на околната среда. Съответно, как можете да улесните, ускорите и подобрите този процес. Като тук вече ще ви запознаем с устройствата на Триобаз, които са именно най-предпочитаните от индустрията пробовземачи, като те са изключително именно поради своята прецизност и много лесен начин на употреба, за който ще разберете повече в бъдеще. И последна тема, но не на последно място, е за новия стандарт в хранителните среди за микробиология в фармацията, именно PMM средите, като тези среди са от най-високо качество, произведени в Германия и са произведени при стриктните изисквания за фармацевтичните чисти помещения от клас А, като те са предпочитаното решение в настоящето в сферата на фармацевтичната индустрия в Европа и притежават редица свойства, които ги правят много удобни за работа, което ще се убедите на този вебинар. Днешното ни събитие е в колаборация с компанията Microbiologics, които са дългогодишни наши партньори. И изборът ни да си колаборираме и да се доверим именно на тях за тези събития е поради причината, че те са водещи световни експерти с повече от 50 години опит в сферата на биологичните услуги и имат силен фокус върху опазването на здравето и безопасността на хората по целия свят. Като вече повече от 50 години те си партнират както с лаборатории в сферата на здравеопазването и природните науки, така и с производители и дистрибутори, като основната им дейност е осигуряване на биологични материали за контрол и пълно портфолио от услуги, свързани с тях, съответно и консултации в сферата на микробиологията, молекулярната диагностика и вирусология. Нашият специален гост днес от Microbiologics е Brice Lantheaume, като той е специалист по техническа поддръжка в Microbiologics от 2020 година насам. Той отговаря за обучението и предоставянето на техническа поддръжка на крайни потребители и дистрибутори. Той разполага с повече от 15 години опит в микробиологията. Кариерата му започва като търговски представител в биотест, където той се фокусира върху продукти за мониторинг на околната среда в производството от фармацевтичната индустрия. А преди да се присъедини към настоящата му компания Microbiologics, той работи в продължение на 13 години в BioMero, в отдела за глобално обслужване на клиенти като апликационен специалист. И днес за нас е голяма чест той да се присъедини към нас и да може да ви представи много важната и интересна тема за качествения контрол и най-вече да ви запознае с нови решения за оптимизация, улесняване на процеса, така че работата ви да стане много по-ефективна и лесна. Така че можем да кажем добре дошли на Brice. Brice, hi and welcome to our special event today. We're very glad you join us. And you can take it away from here.
Thank you, Sienna, and thank you to the Redacom team for inviting me. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be there today and to introduce myself and to speak about the quality controls in, just a moment, yeah, this one. Okay, in pharmaceutical microbiology with compliance, risk, and standards. So together we will review different things. Yes, sorry. Okay, the key regulations, then the risk and best practice. We will see how to perform the growth promotion testing. And at the end of the presentation, we will review why it's important to take into account the environmental isolates. Let's start with the regulations. So there are many key industrial regulations. We can speak about the European Pharmacopoeia, of course, with the chapter 5414, which is the microbiological quality of non-sterile pharmaceutical preparations and substances for pharmaceutical use. The USP, the United States Pharmacopoeia, especially the chapter 1116 for the microbiological control and monitoring of aseptic process environments. We can refer to the US Food and Drug Administrations and other chapters in the USP for disinfectant and antiseptics, antimicrobial effectiveness testing, and last but not least, the European Commission, the Good Manufacturing Practice GMP Annex 1, which is the manufacture of sterile medicinal products. What are the USP requirements? So if we look at the USP chapter 1117, microbiological laboratory best practice, it states that cultures for use in compendial tests should be acquired from a national culture collection or a qualified secondary supplier and have documented equivalency to relevant ATCC strains. They can be acquired frozen, freeze-dried, on slant, or in ready-to-use forms. But what is the reference strains? From the definition from WHO, Good Practice for Pharmaceutical Microbiological Standards, they say that the reference strains are microorganisms defined at least to the genus and species level, cataloged and described according to its characteristic, and preferably stating its origin. They are normally obtained from a recognized national or international collection. But maybe you don't use the word reference strain because we can use also reference cultures, standard cultures, or quality control strains. but they all come from reliable source like ATCC. ATCC is the most popular collection. And all these reference strains can be sourced from commercial control providers in qualitative or quantitative format. And the provider must be ISO 17034 accredited. Few words about the traceability. I think in case of audit, you have many questions about the auditor, about the traceability. If we have a look at the ISO 9000 from 2015, the traceability is the ability to trace the history, application, use, and location of an item or its characteristic through recorded identification data. Another definition I think it's important to explain is what is a transfer, what is a passage, because I know there are many confusion or sometimes it's not very clear. But if we have to define a passage, we can say that a passage is defined as a subculture involving growth of the viable microorganism with fresh medium. And we can consider that a passage typically involves actively transferring microorganism from one medium to another one for the purpose of propagation or maintenance. It's very important to say that thawing or rehydrating a reference culture strain is not recorded or is not considered as a passage. And I strongly encourage you to have a look at this ATCC technical document that is available on the ATCC website. And of course, we can share with you this bulletin, technical bulletin. It's very helpful because you have the definition of what is a QC strain, what is a passage, and how many passages are too many. And especially in this bulletin, ATCC recommends no more than 5 transfers or passages be made from an ATCC culture, because we know that repeated passage or serial culture increase the risk of contamination, and also the repeated passage can result in undesirable genotypic or phenotypic changes. Especially, you can lose the characteristic, a specific characteristic of the quality control strains. And this recommendation of 5 passages or less from the ATCC reference culture has been broadly accepted at the same time in the healthcare community, but also in the pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical industries. Let's continue now with the risk and best practice, because there are many microbial applications in the labs for the industries. In routine, you have to QC of the culture media. This is what we call the GPT, the growth promotion testing. You can use quality control for rapid microbiological method, or MM, to QC rapid sterility testing instrumentation, and to QC also identification system. In other ways, not really in routine, but on a regular basis, you can also use quality control strains for validations of rapid sterility testing instrumentation, method suitability validations, but also anytime you want to develop a new test method to validate rapid microbiological methods, and for example, if you want to perform the disinfectant qualification. How you can guarantee, how you can maintain and prove the traceability of your strains. So you have 2 options. So the first is the in-house cultures, and the second option is the ready-to-use culture. If you choose to have the first option, the in-house cultures, you have to use paperwork to document all tests performed from time of receipt from ATCC and throughout all passages. Of course, it must not be lost. If you use ready-to-use cultures, you can have a look at the certificate of analysis, which is the documentation of all identification tests performed on the lot you received from the time it was received from ATCC to the time it was released for resale. And we know that incoming inspections activities will continue to document traceability in your lab. What are the risks, the main risks of using in-house cultures? The first one, I think, is to have no traceability from the original source, such a national culture collection, because it's true that if you have preserved your strain for many, many years, maybe you have not the traceability from the original source. So in case of audit, it could be a certain problem issue to explain the traceability of the strains. The second point is that often you have subculture many times the quality control strains. So you have increased the risk of genetic mutations. And as I said previously, to modify, to change any characteristic or to lose any characteristic of the strains. And in some cases, the QC strain has adapted to local condition and no longer reflect the original isolates. So it could be a big issue, especially when you want to check performance of reagents or instrumentation. Another risk is the risk of mislabeling, and sometimes when you use some cryotubes, so you have the label on the tube, but the strain is not the one you expected when you resuscitate the strain. There is also a risk of contamination because anytime you have to a cycle for thawing and freezing the strain, you increase the risk of contamination with additional steps to be able to thaw and to freeze the strain. And last but not least, we know it's very time consuming to maintain, preserve, and recover the quality control strains. So what are the risks of freezing reference strains? We know that freezing and thawing can create several problems. The first one is the time consumption. Second one, the contamination at any steps. Two, maybe it will lead to reduce the recovery of the reference strain. And in some cases, you can lose the genetic material or expression. The first point is the time consumption. So if you look on the right, you can see that it requires many steps when you use your own in-house culture, especially if they are if you prepare your suspension from a glycerol stock, because you have different steps: subculturing, transferring, aliquoting the suspension in different tubes. We have many steps. And in some cases, you may be limited in the number of bacterial cells, or you can experience numerous freeze-thaw cycles, which is also detrimental for the quality control strain. Sometimes it could result in no recovery, since the cells may still be in a preserved state, and sometimes you will have to go back to the frozen stock to regrow or retest if failures occur. Another high risk is the contamination. It may occur at every step during the preparation, especially if you're using liquid culture. There is no way to visually confirm the absence of a contaminant in the suspension. And we can consider that each time you will handle a frozen culture, you may introduce contaminants. So as usage increases, it can become harder to identify where and when a contaminant could have entered the cryovial. If the contamination is found, of course, a second attempt from the same cryovial may be attempted, or the cryovial may be discarded and a new vial used. Regarding the recovery, with experience, we know that you can have a reduced recovery. If we look at the literature for the cryopreservation method, they state that sometimes you have to use cells from the log phase, and sometimes in the stationary phase. So we know that cells in log phase may be more susceptible to rapid chilling due to ice formations, and using stationary phase growth cells, so sometimes they are no longer viable. Another point is the differentiation between gram-positive and gram-negative. So the cell walls and presence of peptidoglycans are really beneficial for gram-positive and help prevent damage from physical shock. For the gram-negative, they are more susceptible to dehydration and especially the cell membrane damage. If we want to summarize, we can say that multiple freeze and thaw cycles affect the recovery by allowing cells to expand and shrink quickly, resulting in ruptured cell membranes. So the cells can become mechanically damaged by ice crystal, but also chemically damaged as salts and proteins become concentrated with each freeze-thaw cycle. The last point is the loss of genetic material. There are many studies of the effect of freezing, and one show that for E. coli, that 1% of rare alleles were lost. So imagine, because since E. coli is a stable hardy species, the result of this study will indicate the problem to be widespread and significantly worse for the other fastidious species. Actually, we know that studies regarding how freezing affects culture are not commonly performed due to the length of time required, so many years, and the high cost to perform these studies to observe changes in the cultures. That's why at Microbiologics we offer ready-to-test QC strains in ready-to-use format, lyophilization, so there is no ultra-low temperature freezer is required for the storage, because the storage is in the fridge, and for the transportation it's very easy also because it's at room temperature. And as you can see on the right on the different diagram, there are fewer steps comparing to maintain in-house strains if you use a Microbiologics product. So fewer steps mean fewer chances for error, contamination, and mutation. Just a few words about the Quick Stick. So the Quick Stick is the most popular product at Microbiologics. This is a qualitative product, and this is the all-in-one product designed because in the same plastic device, you will find the lyophilized pellet with the microorganism, but also the swab to inoculate the plate and the ampoule of hydration fluid. So it's very easy and very quick to use because in few seconds you can inoculate the plate, the first resuscitating working plate. We have over 600 strains available, and all the products are produced according to ISO 17034, and they are accredited reference materials. All the products are provided with a certificate of analysis for the full traceability. And on this certificate, you can see the number of passages, and all the products have 3 passages or less from the reference culture. It means that it allows you to have 2 additional steps to respect the recommendation from ATCC to not exceed 5 passages. As I said, this is a refrigerated storage, so it's very easy and economical. And for the packaging, you have 2 packaging available, pack of 2 or pack of 6. And recently, as you can see on the picture, we changed the packaging. So now it's a paperboard packaging to be more green and more eco-friendly. Here is just for an example, a certificate of analysis for Quick Stick or LifoDisc products. You can see that on the certificate, you will have all the information regarding the name of the strain, for example, here E. coli, the number for the ATCC 8739. For example, here, the catalog number, the lot number, the number of passage from the reference, some macroscopic and microscopic features, and the identification performed with the Maditov technology. This slide is very helpful and very interesting, I think, for you, because this is the reference strain maintenance protocol. And you can see that with one pellet from QuickStick or LifoDisc, you can have a daily fresh culture for 1 month. So only one pellet, and you can have a culture, fresh culture every day for 1 month. So it's very, very convenient. So if you follow this protocol, and you will respect the number of passages, because we have passage 3 for the pellet, and then you will resuscitate the pellet on the first working stock culture, then prepare 4 different plates, one for each week of the month, and every day of the week from each weekly working culture, you will subculture. So the maximum number will be 5. So you meet the ATCC requirements regarding the number of passage. Let's continue now with the growth promotion testing. What is GPT? You all know this is the purpose is to determine the suitability of culture media and the batch-to-batch consistency. And you will challenge the medium with a small number of microorganisms to assure the nutritive properties. And when we say a small number, so it's no more than 100 CFU, or we can say less than 100 CFU inoculate on the culture medium. You can find this test in different chapters of the different pharmacopoeia, but they have been harmonized between the main standards. So the EP, European Pharmacopoeia, the USP, the American Pharmacopoeia, and the Japanese Pharmacopoeia, JP. I think it's very important for you to distinguish if you are manufacturing sterile or non-sterile products, or maybe you can manufacture both at the same time. But for non-sterile products, for multi-use products such as solutions, suspensions, creams, capsules, and tablets, you will have to follow the chapter 61, 62, and 51. And for sterile products, single-use, such as injections and infusions, you have to follow the chapter 71. So the chapter 61 microbial enumeration testing is for the non-selective culture media. The chapter 62 test for specified microorganism. This one is for the selective media. 71 sterility testing is for the sterile products. 51 is for the antimicrobial effectiveness testing. And recently they added a new chapter in the USP, so the USP 60, which are the tests for Burkholderia cepacia complex, because the BCC, because we know that BCC is a #1 reason for recall of the product when it's when there are some recalls, contaminations of product. So BCC, Burkholderia cepacia complex, is the #1 reason of recall. So this chapter is not at the moment in the European Pharmacopoeia or Japanese Pharmacopoeia, but very soon it will be added. All these chapters differ in the type of media that you can use, but they all contain the same important testing. And if we have to summarize the growth promotion testing, the first rule is to test each new batch of culture medium. And when I say new batch, it's not only the lot number written on the packaging, but this is also you have to take into account what may happen between the culture media supplier and your lab. So that's why for every new shipment of a batch, you have to perform a GPT, a growth promotion testing. So that's why for you it's better to order culture medium, to have only one lot and to receive this lot in only one shipment, if you want to reduce and optimize your cross promotion testing. If not, for each new shipment, even if it's a batch that you already know and you already received, you will have to perform the cross promotion testing. It's particularly right and true now in summer, for example, when you have 42 degrees. Imagine if your culture media stay on the parking in the van and it's 42 degrees, you should be able to check that the performances of the culture media are the same when you will use and you will be able to detect at least even one cell, one microorganism. The second rule is to inoculate the culture media with a small number of microorganisms. And as I previously said, small number, it means less than 100 CFU per plate. So it's very a small number because the idea also here is to be able to detect a very small quantity of microorganism. Even if there is one cell, one microorganism, you should be able to detect it. The third rule is to use microorganism QC strains that have no more than 5 passages or less for the reference culture. And this is why you have to check this and to count the number of passage and to count anytime you have a subculture from one medium to another medium to take into account this additional passage, because we know that the risk is to have mutation of the QC strain and in some cases also some contamination. And the last rule, to use the microorganism mentioned listed in the different in the pharmacopoeia. Here, this is a summary. So for the GPT, for the chapter USP 61, which is also the EP 2612, microbial enumeration testing. So this is for the non-selective culture media. So you have to use Staphylococcus aureus ATCC 6538, Pseudomonas aeruginosa ATCC 9027, E. coli ATCC 8739, Bacillus subtilis ATCC 6633, Candida albicans ATCC 10231, and Aspergillus brasiliensis ATCC 16404. For the USP 62, EP 2613, specified microorganism for the selective culture media. This is almost the same, but you have also Salmonella typhimurium ATCC 14028 and Clostridium sporogenes ATCC 19404 or ATCC 11437. And if you follow the USP 671, the EP261 sterility test, so you can see it's a mix of the different strains. Let's take an example, a concrete example for the USP 61 for the non-selective culture media. This testing is a quantitative testing because you have to compare the number of colonies that you will obtain on the previously approved batch medium to the number, the count on the new medium batch. So it means that here you have to count the number of the colonies and you have to apply a factor of 2. So what does it mean? What is this factor of 2? If we take an example, if you obtain 40 colonies with your previously approved medium, it means that you are allowed to obtain a number of colonies between 20 to 80 with the new batch of the medium. So it's really a quantitative testing and there is a factor 2 to be applied between the previously approved medium and the number on the new medium batch. For the USP 62 test for specified microorganism, this one is for the selective medium. And this one is a qualitative testing. It's not a quantitative testing. I know sometimes it's confusing, but here there is no factor 2. If we take an example with the mannitol salt agar, for example, for the growth of Staphylococcus aureus, it's written that the growth of Staphylococcus aureus on the new medium new batch of medium should be comparable to growth on the previously approved medium. And here on the picture, you can see that you will obtain a growth of Staph aureus on the mannitol salt agar. It's a selective agar, and there is no growth of E. coli, and this is what we expect to see. So finally, if we summarize, what is important here for the growth promotion testing is to have a side-by-side testing and to keep only one variable, which is the medium. The idea is really to eliminate the other variables such as the temperature, the atmosphere, technique, method, and incubation time. So that's why it's very important to work in the same environment. And I know that sometimes with the selective media, you can obtain low or no recovery. It happens because the expectations for results are not what the media is capable of, or media contains highly selective components, making it difficult for weaker cells to grow. And sometimes it's true that if you not use a non-selective media in parallel, it's complicated to verify that it was a viable culture. So what you can do, if your counts are less than 50 CFU per 0.1 milliliter, you can double the inoculum because there is no requirement about the volume of the inoculum. And we know that sometimes the fresher media, especially if you prepare the media, can be more selective. And that's why we recommend to wait a few days before performing the growth promotion testing. For the GPT, you can use the quick stick and LiFo-Disc, of course. You have just to resuscitate the QC strain according to our recommended growth recommendations. And then you have to prepare a suspension to create and enumerate the suspensions. So you remove the growth from the provided culture and add to saline suspension. You adjust the turbidity to 0.5 McFarland standard. You make 6 serial 1 to 10 dilutions. You plate 0.1 milliliter from last 2 dilutions into non-selective agar, in duplicate, and you incubate. And then you have to count. So in many cases, you obtain a good result, but sometimes the counts are not are not less than 100 CFU on the plates from the last dilutions. So you have to repeat the process again. So it's very critical for you because there is a media release which is delayed, and maybe testing of products may be delayed if not approved media is available for testing. And in some cases, you will have to open investigation for the failure, adding paperwork and time required to perform and accept media for the growth promotion testing. And this is where Microbiologics may support you, can simplify the growth promotion testing for you, because we design Easy AccuShot, which is a specific product that you can see. It's lyophilized pellets, and you have just to add 1 lyophilized pellet of the microorganism in the hydration fluid, including in the kit. You mix, and automatically you will deliver a quantity between 10 to 100 CFU per 0.1 milliliter, according to the pharmacopoeia requirements for the growth promotion testing. So the strain have 3 passages from the reference culture. They are produced according to the ISO 17034, and they have an 8-hour stability. And in each kit, you have 5 pellets plus 5 hydration fluid vials. As you can see, it's very easy to to use the Easy AccuShot. You have just to add 1 pellet to the provided vial of hydration fluid. You vortex, you plate into the previously approved agar and the new agar, and then you incubate according to the laboratory protocol, and then you can count the colonies. For your information, we have developed also an Easy AccuShot qualification program to help you and to guide you through the process of qualifying easy AccuShot. So when it will help you also to satisfy regulatory requirements and ensure quality control compliance. And the auditor expects laboratories to verify that a new product or test procedures performs as expected. So you will receive a qualification guide, and you will be guided step by step with the different lots of easy AccuShots. Let's have a few words now about the environmental isolate, because this is a very important topics right now. You know that more and more we are speaking about environmental monitoring and environmental isolate, but what are environmental isolates? If we look at the definition in the European Annex 1, environmental isolates are suitably representative microorganisms of the site that are frequently recovered through environmental monitoring within the classified areas, especially grade A and grade B areas, but also from personal monitoring or positive sterility test results. Sometimes we can use plant isolate, local isolate, facility isolate, in-house isolate, but they all refer to the environmental isolates. There are many regulatory requirements for that, but recently there was a new there was an update, a new revision of the European Annex 1, the manufacture of sterile medicinal products. It was in August 2023. It focused on revision on minimizing risk by adding contamination control strategy measures, CCS. And in the section 10 is clearly written now that media used for environmental monitoring and APS, aseptic process simulation, should be tested for growth promotion before use, using a scientifically justified and designated group of reference microorganisms, and including suitably representative local isolates. So now it's mandatory to use environmental isolate, local isolate, for the growth promotion testing of the media used for environmental monitoring and aseptic process simulation. There are also other regulations that recommend to use in-house local isolate, for example, the USP 1116. So media used in the microbiological environmental monitoring program or in media field runs are capable of supporting growth of indicator microorganisms and of environmental isolates. This is the same in the USP 1117. In addition, microorganisms used in growth promotion testing may be based on the manufacturer's recommendations for a particular medium or may include representative environmental isolate. Also, the USP 1231 said that for media growth promotion, organisms should be used to represent those that are considered objectionable and or typically isolated from the water system, house isolates. So it's important to include environmental isolate. First, it allows you to enhance the robustness of test method and match the regulatory concerns. There are minimally subcultures strains with wide attributes conserved. There are strains and more representative of local manufacturing environments of raw materials, and they are strongly recommended in different regulations. So when you have to use environmental isolate, so we saw for all the growth promotion testing for environmental monitoring media and media used in APS, but also anytime for product testing media and test method validation and disinfectant efficacy studies. How to select and to preserve? If you determine and you have an objectionable microorganism, you have to isolate this microorganism to grow at the pure culture, characterize the microorganism, determine the risk for the consumer and for the product, identify tests to supplement with isolate, and store the microorganism, maintain the microorganism, preserve the microorganism. How to define this is an objectionable microorganism, especially if you are manufacturing non-sterile products. Here, this is a decision tree that can help you to decide, asking the main questions. For example, does company have requirements for absence of objectionable microorganism in the environment? Is the organisms considered objectionable in the environmental according to the SOP? Has the microorganism contaminated the product in the past? So you respond yes or no, and depending the answer, you can identify the in-house isolate, and with the tracking and trending, evaluate for recurrence of species in the environmental monitoring site, the raw material, the finished product, utility sample sites, and in-process samples. And so this is a recommendation. You have to perform a selection of the in-house environmental isolate based on the trends and frequency of isolation during environmental monitoring. Some are representative strains of different types of microorganisms, and it depends also on the number of incidents of product contamination. Globally, we can consider 5 broad categories for in-house isolates: the gram-positive cocci, such as Micrococcus, Staphylococcus, and Cochuria; the spore formers, for example, Bacillus, Penibacillus; gram-positive rods, such as Corynebacterium; gram-negative rods, for example, Ralstonia, Stenotrophomonas, Phangomonas; and of course, the yeast and molds, for example, Penicillium aspergillus and Rhodotorula. In general, the number of isolate is between 2 to 4. And this is where we can help you, because we know it's very challenging for you to maintain and preserve these environmental local isolates. So we offer you to manufacture this your environmental isolate in a ready-to-use format, finally, such as the other compendial strains, QC strains from ATCC. So it will simplify your way of adding the environmental isolate in your microbiological testing, if you want to add for the growth promotion testing, for example. So we will perform a double identification, a 16S sequencing plus a mass spectrometry identification, and we will manufacture your strain in a ready-to-use format with a 2 years shelf life. It will be, most of the case, lyophilized products in qualitative or quantitative format, with a transportation at room temperature and a storage in the fridge between 2 and 8 degrees. All the products are provided with a certificate of analysis that can give you all the traceability, and including the number of passage. So it's very convenient in case of audit. You can show the certificate of analysis to the auditor. And we have an external storage in our facility. So this is a free strain banking. So anytime you want to reorder, it will be easy for us to manufacture a new lot. We have more than 10 years of experience with the custom products. We manufacture hundreds of strains in our most popular format. So we have, for example, the quick stick, but also the growth promotion testing. We have the easy AccuShot or ePower format for disinfectant qualification. And we are able to manufacture easy strains such as Staphylococcus, Micrococcus, but also the very challenging ones such as Ralstonia, Alternaria. So do not hesitate to ask us if you have any requests. Currently, we are working with the main pharmaceutical company worldwide, so you can recognize Sanofi, Pfizer, Lonza, Bayer. How to order is very simple. You have just to fill out to complete the custom environmental isolate controls request form available on our website. So you can have the discussion with Ridacom, and together you can complete the request form with all the mandatory information. Just to conclude, it's very important to use reference culture in routine tests to meet the pharmacopoeial test requirements. We can say that purchasing reference culture pre-enumerated will save you time and money. We can consider that using a commercially prepared control takes a lot of the burden off your lab to maintain the traceability. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I will be very glad to answer. So you can ask now, or you can also add in the chat box if you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Brice, for the presentation. It was very interesting and useful.
Thanks.
And yes, now if anyone has any questions, you can write them in the chat. Ако имате въпроси, в момента може да ги напишете в чата, за да може Брис да отговори на тях. Actually, Brice, there was a question earlier I saw in the chat. Ms. Pavlinka Stoyanova asked which passage is 0? Is it ATCC itself?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for the question. Exactly. So if you want to order a 0 passage strain, it's mandatory to contact directly ATCC, because at Microbiologics, we are not able, because if you consider that we have to manufacture in a lyophilized pellet, at least we will add one passage. So that's why in our portfolio, the product have 3 passages, except, we have some products with only 2 passages. This is Quick Stick Plus, and we have also passage 1, which are the CRM certified reference material. But if you are looking for passage 0, exactly, you have to contact directly ATCC.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Rudan Christoph has asked if we can provide the presentation to email for the participants. Are you all right with this, if we share it?
Yeah, of course. I will send
Okay.
you the presentation in Acrobat Reader format, and you will be able to have the presentation, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. If anyone else has any questions, you can write them. I think for now it's only these two.
No other question, but of course, do not hesitate to send questions after the presentation. I will be very happy to answer also.
Yeah, thank you. Ако никой друг няма въпроси, можем да приключваме. Все пак, ако в момента има възможност за последни въпроси в чата, ако ви възникнат въпроси, естествено може да пишете на нас и ще свържем с Бри, за да ви дадем точни отговори. И да, много се радваме, че се присъединихте към нас днес. And thank you, Brice, again for the presentation.
Thank you, Sienna. Thank you, Redacom, also for all the long partnership with you.
Of course, thank you too.